I am David Hassan, an Imam who migrated to America. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that day. It was the moment that changed everything, my beliefs, my understanding of faith, and even my sense of existence itself. My family, my friends, my entire faith, everything I had ever known, stood before me in a way I had never imagined. To help you understand, I must take you back to that moment, back to the day my life as I knew it began to unravel. When I turned 67, the doctors delivered the news: pancreatitis. However, it's not just that. It's stage 4 cancer. It was a death sentence in their eyes, but to me, it was something else entirely. I recognized this as a test. This illness was my own trial, just as Prophet Ibrahim faced the ultimate sacrifice, the command to offer his son. This illness served as a test of my faith. This is a test of surrender, and I did not waver. Every chemotherapy session became a battlefield, not just for my body, but for my soul. I found myself trembling in prayer, yet I held on to my belief with every ounce of strength left in me. Each night, as I lay in bed, weakened by pain and exhaustion, I would whisper into the darkness, "Oh Allah, if I die tonight, let me meet you at the end." I had no doubt that my prayers would be answered, but I never expected the answer to come the way it did. One particular day, after returning from chemotherapy, a strange tightness gripped me. At first, I brushed it off as nothing more than a cramp in my chest. But as the minutes passed, it intensified. With each breath, it became heavier, suffocating, unbearable. My vision blurred and my body tensed. Then, suddenly, chaos. I saw them, nurses, doctors. Urgency strained their faces as they rushed toward me. I could hear the frantic beeping of machines and the sound of voices shouting. But their words were slipping away. I was losing my grip on this world. They were pressing on my chest. The pressure continued to increase. "Stay with us," someone shouted. And then, silence. But I was still there. My heart had stopped beating. My body lay lifeless on the hospital bed. Yet somehow I remained. I was floating, watching, observing. How is this possible, I thought. I should have left. I should not be here. I wanted to scream, to tell them I was still alive. But no sound came from me. No one heard me. No one saw me. Is this death? Am I about to meet Allah? At first, there was nothing but darkness. And then, as if pulled by an unseen force, my perspective shifted. I looked down, not from my body, but from somewhere above. I saw myself lying there. Panic gripped the nurses. The doctor pressed down on my chest, his voice urgent. "Compressions. Keep going. Faster." Was that truly me? Was that body truly mine? Before I could understand, a light appeared. It was not just any light, but a warmth and radiance that tugged at something deep within me. And then the sounds began. Whispers, murmurs. They wrapped around me like a long-lost memory, a melody, a lullaby. I can hear my mother's voice. She used to sing to me as a child, her voice soft and soothing. Then came another voice, my father's, reciting prayers before the evening adhan. Every word was clear, every note familiar. My childhood, my past, my entire life wove together in that moment. And then Quranic verses, melodic, powerful, filling the space around me. Who is reciting Wanopori game? And you game Pridvasin, Banirs gain can you den? Why do these voices feel so familiar? And in that instant, everything clicked. My past, my memories, my very soul. It all converged in this one place, drawn toward the light. This is it, I whispered to myself. This is peace. This is the presence of Allah. Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were not tears of sorrow. They were the tears of ultimate joy. This must be paradise. I had no doubt. Praise be to Allah who has brought me here. But the peace did not last. In a blink, everything shifted. The trees around me, so full of life just moments ago, began to wither. Their leaves curled inward, darkening until they turned black. The branches twisted, unnaturally. The once vibrant fruit shriveled and dropped to the ground, rotting the moment they touched the earth. A stench of decay filled the air, thick and suffocating. The sky, once bright with light, dimmed into an unnatural gray. Then the sound came, a moan, low, distant. It sent a chill down my spine. Then another, not whispers, screams. Men. The men are crying out in agony. The women were crying out in despair. Children. The children are crying in terror. Their suffering seeped into me, cutting deeper than any pain I had known. But among them, one voice rose above all the rest. The sound was the scream of a woman. It was different, more desperate, more haunting. And then I knew, that voice, it belonged to my mother. Have mercy, she cried. The darkness thickened around me, but it was not the kind of darkness I had ever known. When you close your eyes, you see darkness. That darkness surrounded me, suffocating, pressing in from all sides. It was endless, an abyss with no walls, no floor, no ceiling, only emptiness stretching beyond comprehension. There was no up, no down, no sense of direction. The void was overwhelming and devoid of direction. Then, in the depths of that void, a voice emerged, deep, resonant. It did not merely echo, it vibrated through me, reverberating in my bones. It was so close, as if whispering directly into my ear, yet it felt vast, infinite. Everything is ready now. The word sent a shiver through my entire being. At that moment, I understood. Allah had foretold this place, this darkness. Allah had warned of it. This was hell. Panic gripped me. My mind raced. Why am I here? There must be some mistake. I had dedicated my life to Allah. I had served him with devotion. I had preached his words, led prayers, and guided others toward righteousness. So why? But no answer came, only silence. Then, through the suffocating void, something took shape in the distance. A throne, towering high upon a platform. Its presence was overwhelming, commanding, and there, seated upon it, was him. My knees buckled. Number this cannot be real. This had to be an illusion, a test, a trick of the mind. Yet there he was, shackled. Thick iron chains bound his hands, his feet locked in restraints. His posture was slumped, his expression a mixture of pain, regret, and an unfathomable sorrow. I recognized him immediately. He was the man whose name I had repeated numerous times during sermons. He was the man whose life I had studied, whose teachings I had followed, and whose name I had uttered with reverence, Prophet Muhammad. What is he doing here? The weight of the sight crushed me. My heart pounded violently against my ribs. My breath became trapped in my throat. This was impossible. He shouldn't have been here. I dropped to my knees. My lips quivered. This cannot be. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't form. My thoughts spiraled into chaos. My faith, everything I had ever believed, was shaking. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but all I could do was stare in horror. Tears streamed down his face. He lowered his head, his sorrow deeper than anything I had ever witnessed. Something within me shattered. An icy void formed in my chest, hollow and merciless. Is this a test? I tried to ask, but no sound came. My mouth moved, but the words never left my throat. I turned my gaze back to him. Say something, please. but he remained silent. Then suddenly a voice echoed through the space. The voice was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was deep, ancient. It carried a weight so immense that it seemed to hold the heavens and the earth in its grasp. People felt it, not just heard it. It is time for you to know, David. Everything will become clear. The sound paralyzed me. I had heard this voice before. It was powerful, absolute, undeniable. Was this Allah? My mind reeled. If this is Allah's voice, then why am I hearing it here? Why am I in this place? I had no answers, only a single, terrifying realization. This was hell. I had spent my entire life warning others about the very hell I was living in. But why am I here? I had dedicated my life to serving Allah. I had preached His words and guided His people. I was an Imam. I was a man of faith. I shouldn't have been here, and yet I was. In that moment, something inside me began to crack. The foundation of my life, everything I had believed in, was about to crumble. Suddenly, a book materialized in front of me. It did not float down gently. It fell from the sky with force, crashing to the ground in a cloud of dust. The impact shook me. My entire body trembled as I stared at it. The Quran. I knew it instantly. But what was it doing here? My thoughts swirled as I tried to make sense of it. Then, as if touched by unseen hands, the book began to open on its own. There was no wind, yet the pages turned slowly, deliberately, as if guided by an invisible force. Each turn felt heavy, like the weight of centuries passing before my eyes. I did not blink. I could not. This was a sign. Then, a voice spoke again. The sound was deeper than before. It was more powerful than anything I had ever heard before. The voice shook, not just the air, but the very fabric of existence itself. It cut through me, sharp and piercing, yet it spoke not just to my ears, but directly to my soul. David, have you ever questioned? The moment those words reached me, something broke within. I clutched my chest. The weight of that question crushed me. And I knew. The revelation of everything I thought I understood, everything I had believed without question, was about to occur. And I was not ready. What kind of question would I ask with my head in my hands? Was this something anyone would even think to question? My heart pounded in my chest. Allah. It had to be a test. It had to be. I recognized that voice. I mentioned it many times in my sermons as the voice of the Lord, the Creator of all things, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Yet now, that very voice did not seem to hear me, or perhaps it did, but it did not seem to care. Then the voice spoke again. How do you know He is the Creator of all things? The words sliced through me as if they were made of ice. Khaled, that was my name. Have you ever truly thought about it? A chill ran through me. My breath caught in my throat. My face turned pale. Cold sweat formed on my skin. I had never asked myself that question before. Who is Allah? Never. Not once. I had preached about Him. I had recited His name, spoken of His greatness, and devoted my life to His service. But had I ever questioned? Had I ever sought the truth beyond what had simply been given to me? The Quran lay open before me. The pages turned faster, as if moved by an unseen force. Then, out of the pages, something emerged. At first, it was nothing more than a swirl of dust. But as the dust settled, the image became clear. It was a city. It was a place I instantly recognized, the Kaaba. But something was different. This was not the Kaaba I knew. The structure was the same, but the people surrounding it were unfamiliar. They moved in circles, carrying incense, bowing, and offering prayers. But they were not worshiping Allah. They were worshiping idols. There are hundreds of thousands of them. The air was thick with the scent of burning offerings. The figures chanted prayers to stone gods, their voices rising in devotion. I watched in horror as the idols were named. 3 names, spoken with reverence: Al-Lat, Manat, Al-Uzza. These were the very idols I had spoken of in my sermons. I had taught that they were false gods, worshipped in ignorance before the coming of Islam. The voice spoke again. This was the Kaaba before Islam, David. Do you see? Where was Allah among them? The question sent a tremor through me. My lips trembled as I tried to form an answer. Allah was not an idol, I protested. Allah is greater than all of them. But the voice continued, and yet no one prayed to him. The weight of those words pressed down on me with an iron grip. Allah existed before Islam. Yes, I was fully aware of that. The Arabs had believed in Allah before Islam, but he had not been their only God. He had been one among many, superior to their other deities, but still part of a pantheon. Then who was he truly? What do you mean? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Who is Allah, David? The question pierced through me, raw and merciless. I opened my mouth, but no words came. For the first time in my life, I had no answer. The images shifted. The scene changed. This was no longer Arabia. I was now in a land I did not recognize. The architecture was different. The people were different. And yet, something felt hauntingly familiar. A group of people had gathered. They carried bowls of offerings, their faces solemn. An altar stood before them, preparing sacrifices. Then I saw it. He was a towering idol. And my heart stopped. I knew this God. The idol's very stone bore the name, Baal. My knees gave out beneath me. No. The name sent a shudder through me. Baal was the god worshipped by the Canaanites. Long before Islam, the Canaanites worshipped the ancient deity. This was impossible. I looked closer. The idol's body bore a carving in an ancient script. The letters were unfamiliar at first, but then my breath hitched. One word stood out. I knew that word. It was ancient. It predated Arabic by a significant margin. It predates even Islam. It was a name for God, a name that had been spoken long before the Arabs ever uttered the name Allah. How is this possible? I whispered. The voice drew closer, wrapping around me like a shadow. You never considered it before, did you? A sudden gust of wind swept through the space, knocking the breath from my lungs. It felt as though I had been plunged into ice water, drowning, suffocating, pulled under by an unseen force. And then, light, blinding light. I gasped, my vision blurry. My body ached, my limbs weak. Shadows moved above me, figures in white shifting in and out of focus. He's awake. The voice was distant, muffled. It echoed as if carried from the end of a long tunnel. My body felt heavy. My mind swam in confusion. Where was I? What had I just seen? Why did I feel as though my entire world had just crumbled? Where was I? A sharp pain burned in my lungs with every shallow breath. Each gasp of air confirmed the impossible. I was alive, but I had died. I knew it. I had felt it. I had been somewhere else. It was a place that felt like hell. Gaddafi, Bin Laden, countless others. There is also a figure seated on the throne. The prophet, why was he there? And why? Why was I not? I was back in my body, my hands, my feet. They were mine again. Yet something was wrong. A coldness lingered deep within me, like a shadow that refused to fade. The world around me slowly came into focus. The muffled sound sharpened. The sterile scent of the hospital filled my senses. Then a face appeared, leaning in close. A nurse. Her blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders. Her eyes, blue, bright, yet clouded with concern, locked onto mine. "You're lucky God brought you back," she murmured. Her words penetrated me with a sharp edge. My throat tightened. My chest felt heavy. I gazed at her, my voice barely audible. "Which God?" The moment I spoke, her expression changed. Confusion. She blinked, tilting her head slightly, as if trying to determine whether I had spoken nonsense. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice light and casual. For her, it was a simple phrase. It was a sentiment that held no significance for her. What does this mean for me? The weight of that question descended upon me in a tidal wave. A blade sliced through my mind. My gaze drifted upward to the ceiling. The blinding white light above me no longer brought comfort. It was oppressive, crushing. A heaviness settled in my chest. My heart felt like stone, pressing down, sinking deeper. God had asked me a question about my soul. Hadn't he? I thought so. I knew so. But the images, Baal, Allah, the unrelenting storm twisted them together. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to push them away. But no matter how hard I tried, that voice would not stop echoing. For days, I remained silent. My family came to see me. Their voices filled the room, but they barely reached me. My wife sat beside me, holding my hand. My grandchildren gathered at my bedside, their innocent faces watching me, waiting for me to speak. But I felt nothing. I wanted to feel nothing. I wanted to close my eyes and forget, but I couldn't. The images wouldn't leave me. Baal, Allah, Muhammad, and hell. The memories spun through my mind like a relentless whirlwind. Then one morning, he arrived, a priest. At first, I paid him no attention. He held a book in his hands while wearing a white robe, the Bible. He sat beside me and waited. He did not speak immediately. He simply sat. Why was he here? We were in America. Perhaps these visits were routine, but his presence felt different. Strangely, I felt calm. Then finally he spoke. "Hello, David," he said, his voice steady. "I want to talk to you." I turned my head toward him. My voice, when I finally spoke, was hoarse and raw, as if dragged from the depths of something unspeakable. "To me?" The priest did not falter. He smiled, gently placing the Bible on his lap. Then he studied me. "You saw something, didn't you?" My heart stopped. For a brief moment, I forgot how to breathe. He knew. I had told no one. But somehow, he knew. A part of me wanted to reject him, to push him away. But another part, deep inside, wanted to tell him everything. But what would happen if I did? Would he believe me? Would I even believe me? My lips trembled. Do you know what I saw?" He locked eyes with me. I looked away. My gaze lifted once more to the ceiling, but this time my vision blurred. Tears welled in my eyes. A heaviness settled deeper within me. Indescribable, overwhelming. The longer I stayed silent, the heavier it became. And then I broke, because I saw hell. My voice was barely audible, yet it carried an unwavering presence. The priest did not flinch. He simply nodded. "Yes." A shudder ran through me. "There was a throne," I continued, "but there was someone sitting on it. He shouldn't have been there. He was not." Tears flowed freely from my eyes, yet I barely noticed them. The priest watched me intently, his face calm and unreadable. There was no judgment in his gaze, only quiet patience. "Who was it?" he asked. I lowered my head. my hands trembling as I covered my face. My breath came in shallow gasps. Muhammad. The name felt heavy on my tongue. I saw him. He was there. However, his presence was unexpected. As those words left my lips, an unbearable weight pressed against my chest. My heart pounded as though a stone had settled over it, suffocating me. The priest remained silent for a moment, absorbing my words. Then, in a voice both calm and deliberate, he asked, "What about Jesus?" I opened my eyes, startled by the question. "Jesus," I echoed, my mind reeling. No, Jesus was not there. He was not among the souls I had seen, not among those who suffered. But why? Shouldn't he have been? I had never questioned this before, never allowed myself to wonder. But now, for the first time, the thought took hold. Where was Jesus? The priest slowly opened his Bible, his fingers tracing the familiar pages. His voice was quiet but firm as he read aloud, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." John 14:6. I had heard this verse before. However, this time, every word pierced my heart with a sharp edge. I am the way, the truth, and the life. The words echoed through my mind, each syllable reverberating deep within me. The priest placed his hand gently over mine. "God brought you back," he said. "He does not want to lose you." His words unsettled me. A shift had taken place within me, something I could not explain. My mind became a battlefield, torn between everything I had believed and the questions now clawing at my soul. Had it all been a lie? That night I tried to sleep, but everything felt different. And then I dreamed. In my vision, there was a throne. A single figure sat upon it, the prophet, just as I had seen before. But something was different this time. The chains that bound him had changed. His eyes, once filled with sorrow, no longer wept. Slowly, he rose from the throne. His gaze locked onto mine, piercing through me. With each step he took toward me, something inside me twisted. "Go find the truth," he said. His voice was clear, each word sharp and unmistakable. I woke up suddenly, struggling to breathe. Tears streamed down my face as I buried my head in my pillow. "What is this?" I whispered. "Where's the truth, O Allah?" With the first light of dawn, I made my decision. I would seek the truth. That very day, I went to see Father John. This time, it was my choice. He welcomed me without question, his Bible resting open in his lap. "What are you searching for, David?" he asked. I hesitated for only a moment before answering. "The truth," I said. "Tell me." He nodded, his expression steady as he turned the pages of his Bible. "Read this," he said. Once again, the verse stood before me. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." John 14:6. The words pierced through me like a blade. No one comes to the Father except through me. The sentence carved itself into my memory. My thoughts churned. Jesus? Who was Jesus? I had never truly asked myself that question before, but now I could not escape it. That night another dream came to me. This time the throne was empty. No one sat upon it. Instead, from the throne, a radiant light shone, and within the light, a man in white appeared. I did not need to ask his name. I already knew. He walked toward me, his presence overwhelming yet peaceful. "Do not be afraid," he said. "I am here." 2 simple words, yet they shook me to my core. I awoke instantly, my heart pounding. The next morning I sought out Father John once more. "Will Jesus accept me?" I asked him. A warm smile spread across his face. "He has been waiting for you, David." I looked down at the Bible in my hands, gripping it tightly. Just then, my grandson entered the room. "Grandpa?" he asked, his small eyes wide with curiosity. "What is that?" Before I could answer, my daughter appeared in the doorway. The moment she saw what I held, her face twisted with anger. "Is that a Bible?" she demanded. Her voice was sharp, filled with disbelief. "David, what is the meaning of this? You're my mother." She stopped herself, frustration thick in her voice. "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. For the first time in my life, I felt no fear, no hesitation. I met her gaze and spoke the words that were now weighing heavily upon me. I am no longer who I once was. My heart broke and healed at the same time. My daughter's face turned cold. "Nice. You're shaming us," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. She grasped Yusuf's hand tightly and walked away. Everything fell silent. That day, everything changed. My family, my children. One by one, my grandchildren turned their backs on me. They cast me out and rejected me. My mosque and my community abandoned me. But the color of my world had already shifted. I was no longer afraid. Loneliness no longer had a hold on me. A few days later, Father John stood beside me. "Your baptism will take place today at the church," he said. "Okay." At that moment, I felt a peace I had never known before. For the first time, I was absolutely certain of my decision. Everything seemed to be washing away as the water poured over my head, including every burden, fear, and nightmare. The chains, the throne, the darkness, all of it flowed away with the water. Tears rolled down my face, but this time they were different. They weren't cold. They were warm. For the first time, I felt free. Then, in the depths of my heart, I heard a voice. For years, I had prayed to Allah. But for the first time, I received an answer from Jesus, and that single truth changed everything. The old David no longer existed. I was no longer an imam. I was just a man. But for the first time, I was truly alive. Not long after, something miraculous happened. My body no longer harbored the cancer that had drained and weakened me. The doctors were baffled, but I knew who had healed me. Every morning, I opened the Bible. Every morning, I fell to my knees in prayer. But now, the words that poured from my lips were different. "Thank you for waiting for me, Jesus. Thank you for finding me." Then one morning I woke up, and for the first time, there were no nightmares, no throne, no fire, no weight, no chains, no cold. Everything disappeared. I was in the arms of Jesus, and for the first time, I was truly alive. I am the way, the truth, and the life. (14:6)